Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Session57. I was doing a sound check, and I've also had a voiceover audition, and I noticed that when the microphone is right side up, that I'm actually striking the condenser better, and I think I'm getting better sound. And I've even been on professional sound engineer Zoom classes where the guy was saying it's kind of a drag that the logo of the company, in this case Rode Microphones, is the spit shield is upside down. And really what it is we're doing kind of the equivalent of, we're doing like the cool kid thing by hanging it. We're hanging it upside down to get that sort of in studio thing. And it dawns on me you can just flip the mic over and put it right side up, or whatever angle you need to get it. And it is sort of cooler to sing up into the mic, but or talk into. But then this is definitely a little bit more, Edward R. Murrow talking on a desk mic. But I think I get better sound out of it this way because I can aim better and it's natural. I don't know. Anyway, weird place to start, which brings me back to we're at 57, and I was telling a friend that what I've been doing is riffing off the number and sort of finding a correlation between the number and the episode, and then that's sort of how I start. And he goes, on 57, what are you going to do? Talk about ketchup? And I'm like, you make a good point. That's not always a great place to start. So I won't, but I will bring it up. The only correlation is my time in Pittsburgh and Heinz being the big industry there. That's about all I'll say about 57. And I can't help myself. 57 Chevy is the famous sort of hot rod, and was the original, sort of car in the 50s nostalgia kick. And then I think that's about how far I can take 57. So I have been thinking about through the week, I'm trying to think about what I'm going to talk about. And I'm starting to kind of put Saturday obviously on the calendar, on my mind, and to try to increase sort of what's been happening week to week and hopefully get some momentum. And oddly enough, things that I clip out and put up on social media to drive people to YouTube, which is not, I think, the most effective way to do it. I think YouTube is its own ecosystem, and the cross-pollination is, they're all their own thing, I think. But saying that, my numbers in terms of how many people have seen my reel have increased over the last 2 weeks, and maybe it's because maybe it's because of just improved selection of the actual, what's the cool thing I'm discussing, or maybe it's the lighting, picking a better filter. I think also I have made the decision to not weigh in, because I think that's just not my style. I won't go into my judgment about what I think of people who do weigh in, but and I think that will move the needle slower, because that's just a choice I've made. And I think you can glean feelings, or you can glean leanings just by the way someone goes about their business. And if fingerprints are unique, then maybe worldview is unique. And where things get tricky is when people start shrinking their personal idiosyncratic worldview, which may have a hodgepodge of across-aisle thinking in random and in specific areas. So I don't want to be that dude. But I have noticed maybe and again, everything is so damn random at this point for me, in terms of how things are going on, what selections. But I think a little bit more of a lighter mood and a little bit more of a storytelling vibe on the actual reel itself is part of what I'm noticing as the sort of denominator of these things. And so, I don't know. I have spoken previously about wanting to be a little bit more lightening up, but you're not always there. And, where I'm at vis-a-vis the show, it's bogging down because of I need to make more efforts to make appointments or just to cold call some theaters and see if they have availability in the new year. But I am sort of perplexed and on the fence and getting to the end of, I know it's been the longest, and I've been calling it an ankle sprain, but what it was a tear of a tendon, partial tear of a tendon, and that took longer to heal than I wanted it to. And some personal stuff derailed my healing, set me back a month or so. But it has been the longest recovery or something that wasn't, open heart surgery. I'm aware of that, and I've probably glided with a little bit of the time off and time to think. And I guess they say that's overrated, unless you happen to have a book deal and can go to India and Italy, you know what I'm saying? And that's usually not a dude lit notion of you don't hear this pitch, a man recovers from an ankle injury and tries to find himself by traveling through Europe on a yoga retreat. I mean, it's just not really, or at least I would not see myself in the lead of that story. But I've been going to PT twice a week, and then I add a third day at the gym. And so I'm just getting my legs back under me. And I don't know if I've burned the bridge with my kind of day gig or not, but I'm in contact with them, and they are not responding. So that's something to think about. And so if I have to pivot, which scares the living daylights out of me, I'm sort of now transitioning this vlog, this channel into, doing my own career, counseling. And right now I'm at cult leader or pretty much those are my qualifications, to run my mouth and be adhered to, or I don't know what else. And I'm kidding, but I have finished my studying on the real estate, and I need to reminder here on the desk session to fill out the application and pay my fees and get that thing in before that expires, after all that work. And I guess you don't want to spend too much time in the past and thinking about it, but you do. Where I'm at is, if you were to have a career counselor, I would imagine they would say, what were the things that are subjects or things that got you going as a kid? You know what I'm saying? Like, they might take you through that process when you did, and the odd thing is that I liked science in grade school up until 8th grade, and I did really well with biology in 8th grade, and that fucked me because my aptitude there, because I really liked the teacher, put me in honors biology as a freshman in high school, and it was more than I could fucking handle, and it really derailed my academic confidence. And I think I was just hanging for dear life for dear life as my freshman year, and it I think I got a C, and so that would rule out some of my aspirations. And then it got me thinking maybe science wasn't my thing, and then I found the acting. But In terms of finding your aptitudes, it was always being funny, being a ham, obviously the acting. But more than that, it was, and I guess I could just go into an anecdote, and I don't know if it appears in any of my writing in my book or on my old blog, but I've never really, because I really don't remember the content, but I do remember that in my English class, I was very hyperactive. And I should say that along with getting into honors my freshman year and I think I was in honors English as well, I had blown out my knee and I was on crutches for most of my freshman year. So I was always tired, always worn out, and I guess that may have had something to do with my academic performance, what have you. And I remember I was demoted from English honors, and when it came to sort of an evaluation, the teacher said that I challenged authority. And I think it was just that I was asking questions, or I may have even fact-checked her on an erroneous fact, and she was not. I just had a sense that she taught her class like the same way every year, every day. This is the book. This is what the book means. That kind of thing. And I guess I was too verbal. So I guess after that, when I was back in like the general population English class, I was always hyperactive, not diagnosed, not, I might have even have been narcoleptic, because I would have these spikes of energy and then I would pass out and sleep a lot. But, I couldn't sit still at very least, and I just couldn't I just couldn't stand having to sit there and listen, I suppose, to some degree, unless it was riveting, which it seldom was, correct, But I had a teacher who I would talk across the back of the class, and I would play drums with my pencils. Like I was a menace of, I wasn't a delinquent or a bad kid, but I was hyper and couldn't sit still and had the leg shakes, and then I would, tap beats out on my desk, and it was very distracting for him. And he got loose one day, and he said, "All right, DeGregorio, you think you want to teach this class?" And I said, I don't know. And he goes, "No, why you want to teach that class?" I said, "Okay." And he said, "All right, well, come on up here." And he goes, "I'm gonna do you, and you do me." And he sat in my chair. And he distracted me as the teacher, but all he had was the tapping of the desk. He had no game. He had no content. And when it was my turn to kind of deal with him heckling me from the seat, which he thought was going to teach me a lesson, I started being him. And I took on his voice, and I did his thing. And I started mimicking the way he would make a point and refer to the blackboard. I was drawing shit. And I had like content, like I was leading the class to the degree that I could share my comprehension. So they were blown away, because all it took, it's a parlor trick, but all it took was me having the balls to like do his shtick, and all he had was tapping on the desk. And it got so bad, and I kind of ran the class for a minute, and he finally just said, all right, I give up. Just please sit down and be quiet if you can. And I sort of had that mini triumph of using my mimicry, my ability to put quick ideas together, and my fearlessness / need to be seen really kind of coalesced and made me sort of, for a day, a folk hero. A car really fucked with homeboy in class. He went up there and he did a whole impersonation, and it was one of those things. And still on the coffee. It built the reputation, built your confidence, and then that's where the sort of kernel of what do you want to do with yourself. And I don't know how you would translate being a punk kid who fucks with his teacher. I don't know how you turn that into a gig, and then that would maybe ultimately was what led me to stand-up comedy. But since I've scaled that back, it's no longer this issue I have with authority is no longer manageable if I need to get back into the workforce. And so it's all starting to perplex me, but I'm trying to, boil it down, figure out what it was. What did I say? Was it just the fact that I was opinionated? And I talked last week about not being a critic and not having your opinion be like your personality. Do you know what I mean? What does your opinion have to do with your stick-to-itiveness? What does your opinionated nature have to do with you being task-oriented or, and I've said a million times, part of why it's hard for me to give up my job, I don't know that I have yet, but I was there for a long time. And so I had, senior status. I had seniority at least over. No one had more years under their belt than maybe one other waiter, and so I was an opener. And it didn't mean I didn't have to take shit. Of course, I had to take shit. I had to take, or be led by different. And there was a lot more turnover in management than there was in the bar area. So I always had that he's been here since day one thing, and that gave me a bit of a as long as I was playing the game of letting them, knowing that they were, I understand the pecking order, and I wasn't, I just wanted the path of least resistance. So part of that is giving that up for rookie status, and that's everybody's problem. And I've heard that ad nauseum in the sort of self-development sphere of, your Gary V's and guys like that, where, that's the hardest part, that why people cling to things is because they don't want to have that learning curve. They don't want to know nothing. And they want to live in a status of, being superior, even if it's in, it's almost, you'd rather be the king of nothing than a soldier in something, I guess. And I know that that's immature, and that's almost like, Red in Shawshank Redemption. I mean, the man can get anything done inside those walls, but outside those walls, he's nothing. And, you have to think about, and I think prison films are metaphors for, have you created your own prison? Are you in your own prison? And that's a lot of what I'm thinking about. And then so last week I spoke about Ken Kesey, and I spoke more about another novel, but One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is like the reason I loved that movie as a kid. And I guess it was somehow it had a command performance on the TV one night, and it was a little over my head because I was real little. But Jack Nicholson in that scene where he does he visualizes the World Series and does a play-by-play of a visualized imagining of how the game's going, and he, for that split second, he's in control of the emotions and the spirits, and he's in control of that ward. And then that's when he makes an enemy out of the state, out of Nurse Ratched. And I think I identified with that little bit of a rebel thing. I mean, it's rich to be a rebel in suburban New Jersey, and I wasn't a rebel of bad behavior. I was more of like trying to be an intellectual provocateur. That's why I resented. I wasn't the class clown because I resented that. I wasn't like spitballs. I was verbally jousting with people because I really thought I could hang. I had this precocious nature, I guess. And so I didn't want to be called a class clown. I wanted to be more of a class intellect or comedian or wry person. But I also, was, had all the basics, 3 squares and a cot. I had all the basics covered, so I wasn't a real rebel like McMurphy. But I think that's why that piece of art resonated, because everybody wants to think or wants to be or sees themselves in their heart of hearts as a McMurphy. But the tragedy of that story is he gets lobotomized, which is literally a hole in your brain to stop you from and it's now when you hear it and you think about it, because nothing is metaphorical anymore. Everybody is literally behind a microphone on the internet saying exactly what they think and feel and making observations and weighing in and then whatever. And so, but when you think about it, like, they literally drilled a hole in his head to get him to behave, and that's what they are asserting that a society does, or our society does, or maybe it has to. I don't know. What does it look like when everybody can be the free spirit? I don't know. I don't know. I only know that I have to be the source of my own liberation. I recently read a book by Andre Dubus III. He wrote The House of Sand and Fog. He wrote a book called Townie, which was really good. And his second one is Ghost Dogs, or something like Ghost Dog. I'm blanking on it, but it's his latest memoir. Mostly he wrote novels, and then Townie was his first memoir. And I sent it to my mom because it's set in sort of rural Massachusetts, and she was from rural Connecticut, and so it had that. There's a different thing. New England has a very different thing than where I grew up, and where probably you grew up if you don't know. But like, New England does have a very haunted sort of, the cold, the winters are rough there, and the sun doesn't shine a lot there, and there's just the achy longing kind of thing happening there. And then if you're middle class and below, you're going to have struggles. But I would say in New England that education is very important. So there's this sort of stew of over intellectual and just it's like when you're on a tube TV back in the day, when it started to lose the vividness of its color. It's kind of like how I view New England, is sort of in that, like, oh boy, the tube's about to go, this TV's on the fritz, because it's like the orange isn't quite orange and the green isn't quite green, but it's still color, but it's muted. So he captured that well, but he had this incredible good fortune and talent to have become successful as a writer. And he had a very triumphant, I can only imagine, he described it well, but he had a very triumphant weekend where he has an aunt who was losing her eyesight, and his mother, and I guess maybe his own wife and kids. I don't know, but he had been so successful. I think The House of Sand and Fog was optioned and then made into a film. So he had a grip of cash. He had enough money to build a house and from scratch, and kind of build his dream house. And he was treating his aunt and his mother and everybody to, I guess, like just the weekend in New York, and it may have been congruent with an award, or just like, let's go to New York and see shows. And he put everybody up at this Waldorf Astoria, and he had a line that I aspire to, and I probably could find it on my phone if I can do that without too much distraction and taking away from. And I think I should paraphrase it because it will take too long to source it. But the line was, all those years I was laying in bed at night, or a scared little kid waiting for someone to rescue, only to find out I was the one that was going to be able to come to my own rescue. And, that's what a beautiful thing. And really that would be my definition of success. And he didn't call it success, but that longing we all have for someone to please come up here and make me less sad, I guess, when you're hugging a stuffed animal or whatever, if your parents are arguing. Or he had a lot tougher childhood than I did, but that longing for rescue as a kid, and then to know that you are your own salvation, it must have felt great. And I'm sure, and I know what that longing is for, and I want to get there, and I don't know what that has to do with finding your vocation in late in life, or finding a way to support yourself. And I guess what I'm really kind of debating is, what would it be like if I just really went for it, at a crazy old age, have I ever really given myself that opportunity that wasn't subsidized by, I went to drama school, which was still in the firmament of academia, and I chose a school where a degree would be in the offering and a college experience of some kind would be there. So that wasn't really like going to LA or going to New York to make it. I still had, those stratas. And then, I always had a gig. I always had 3 shifts. I always, I talk about like a memoir about 3 shifts. Like that was always my goal. Not my goal, but the good fortune, or just the way I worked out my life, was that I would only want 3 shifts at a bar, because I wouldn't have been able to. It meant I had four days where I wasn't doing that. It was like a deal with the devil. I wasn't going to even go 50-50 with my time. I had to have more days away than on. More days off, not like off days, but because I was an actor and a comic, I needed more nights free. So 3 was my max. But even in New York, before I did stand-up, that was my sort of mandate to myself. And it kept things lean, I have to be honest. And that was self-driven. I could have been more flush if I worked 5, but who can work 5 nights in New York City? It's a grind, and you don't see the sun in the winter, and I just couldn't do that. And so now, but that was still hedging a bet a bit, keeping those 3 shifts, and maybe that's the leap, I remember my last night in Manhattan before I moved to LA. It was after 9/11, so the city was definitely an odd place, and I was working at Luna Park, which is the outdoor, like they throw up picnic tables and plastic chairs, and it's one of the few places you can drink and eat outside seasonally, and it was connected to a place called The Coffee Shop on Union Square. And Luna Park was like, it would get mobbed, and you would just sling Coronas and make a lot of money, and it was bedlam, total bedlam to work there. But I'd gotten close with a few of the people there, and I had obviously all my friends from past life in New York, and I had like a going away place at a really off, not a hip place. I think it was called Le Bar Bat. It was on 57th Street. It was like the only nightclub in my neighborhood, and it was not like considered hip at all, But I remember being down there, and it was my last night, and I was dancing, and it was there was a Mary J. Blige song on, and everybody was dancing, and I used to rock a ring. I used to wear rings, and my fingers are so narrow that I had to use a washer to keep the fucking thing from flying off, and eventually that flew off. But I was like, oh, and I shot, my ring went flying across the dance floor. And like, what dude I was really trying to be that guy who was rocking rings, you know what I'm saying? And it thing went, because I was, doing this, it thing went flying, and I was trying to get people, some people I knew, some people that I lost my ring. We're like, that's not really hip and cool. Like, you don't, you're not the man when you're looking for a cosmetic flea market ring that you were rocking to look like you had some style. And I found it, but my friend, dear friend Inga, was working somewhere else, and so she had to come late. And of all the people saying goodbye, she came with a gift, and she had done the reverse. She had moved from Los Angeles to New York because of a more musical theater aspiration, and I was kind of doing the reverse. And she had a gift, and it was a cool, it wound up never working, but it was like this is how long ago it was. It was like a hands-free car kit with like a speaker and it would go in. It was like so that you could make your cell phone hands free. She goes, you got to be careful in Los Angeles. You're going to have to drive everywhere. And so she gave me this thing that I don't think I ever got it to work. You know what I mean? And in her card, she said something about stepping out on faith. She said, it's time to step out on faith. And the idea of jumping the net will appear. And what a beautiful sentiment. What a beautiful friend. I see her every chance I can when I go home, when I go back to New York. But she understood what was really going down. And I really loved New York and being there, and I had friends, and I was closer to home, obviously. And that was a big leap, sure. And I didn't know what I was going to do, and it's a miserable feeling to be in that limbo and to be broke. And so there was a scary month or two. I don't know how long it took, but it was a while before I figured it out. And, you know, neighbors are bumping tunes, so I'm going to lose my focus, but I'm going to calm down. See, look. Anyway, I figured it out, but eventually I got a fucking bar job, and I wanted not to get a bar job, and this one was rough because I had day shifts, which I'd never had in New York, but it actually gave my nights free for stand up, and so that was that. But so now when I'm looking at my transition, or if I go back to work or I don't, or I have a real estate license, what do I get off the ground? When have I really not held down 3 shifts of subsidizing myself? Because you have to, you know, that was my way of supporting myself. And so now, at the worst time in our industry and at the worst age for marketability, I might as well start a vodka company or a tequila company from scratch, you know what I mean? And that's one of my jokes in my show is I would tell people on stage, you know, I know you got to come up with a backup plan, and my backup plan is I'm going to start panning for gold in the Sierra Nevadas. You know, it's like, because everybody's like, why don't you just go, you know, be more, it seems like you're more of a writer. I'm like, yeah, there's another one. That's another industry that's hot. And so, I mean, this is how life is. If I'm channeling or recalling and just being moved by Inga's card and gift, such a thoughtful gift, and a beautiful card of stepping out on faith. Maybe it takes that long to receive that message, and maybe that ultimate step of faith is now. I don't know. One thing I want to try, they say try new things, try things that scare you. Like, how about I try not fucking worrying? If they say past is to not be reflected on, but the past is indications of what, you know, I've never gone belly up, you know, God forbid, knock on wood. That's a possibility for everybody, I suppose, in America these days. My health insurance is going to go up, and, you know, all the reasons to stay panicked and to stay put or beg for, you know, hope and pray my job does want me back, or that I could just go get another bar job, you know. All of that's possible, but you know, the other famous quote is everything we want is on the other side of fear, you know. And so I'm just doing a lot of that rumination, which is probably not great, but I'm trying to put out there that the things I gotta try on are positive rather than negative, meaning, you know, what you think is what you are. You know, you've heard that too, and it's taken me a long time. And in this given week between desk sessions, I've had off the handle rants of woe and fear and dread and not looking forward to the future. And yet when I come here, is it a front that I try to present? Because it is and it isn't. I am at that point where maybe that ranting and raving and fear stuff is the old habit. still reeling and still trying to stay alive. Like, any of those Raid commercials or Nasonex or Mucinex commercials, like those animated mucus monsters or the scrubby bubbles, like the dirty part of the tub. They're still there, and the new thing, the thing that I'm trying new, which could be a new career, a new pathway, whatever it is, that's the scrubbing bubbles and the Raid and the mucus pill and the animation, and it feels like that because it does feel like a setback when I have these dark thoughts or give voice to them. And so I'm just saying, like, the new thing, the new fangled thing might be to for the first time step out on faith, to be sure of nothing and still do it, but to be sure of something good. That's that I think it's Sondheim who did the lyrics, and Leonard Bernstein did the music. West Side Story, right? Could it be something's coming, something good, it'll be there, like something's coming, I don't know what it is, but it is. Wow, did they capture that feeling musically and then lyrically. And another thing I want to add to the death session is organically what I choose to talk about. So I have to remember, and then I've been linking those songs in the description to basically show that I do live in my head with music, and that I always connect music to things. And so I have the song that Mary J. Blige played at the club. Well, not that she played, but the song that was my going away party at that cheesy club on 57th Street. And I have to find that West Side Story song. I think that's what it is. And I guess that's the thing. Algorithmically, when you have Apple Music or Spotify and you make these or you start a channel, they basically, every third song starts with the artist you selected, but they are not able to connect West Side Story to Mary J. Blige, and that's hopefully the sort of pushback and the fight back and the thing that me being here talking to you for 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 28, whatever. The max I've gone is, I think, 48. I don't intend to always make it about the length of the situation, but, as this goes forward, I may run a clock and make sure I either get to where I want to get, which would be a prescribed time or whatever. The point is, I want to make my point, and I want to, I guess what a true vlog and what a true blog and the thing. I've been a journal keeper my whole life. That's not true, but I've started probably 14. I started before they asked you to turn them in English class, and even in drama school they said they wanted to read our journals about, like, they wanted us to keep an acting journal. I'm like, well, I keep a journal, you ain't reading that shit, and I'll fudge the other one. But it was mind-blowing. There were early movies where people were like journaling online, and that they wanted people to have access to it. That was anathema to me. But at a certain point, that withholding is not getting me anywhere. And so just being here week to week and sort of chronicling and coming up with a playlist ultimately of random ass songs that relate to stories I tell them, that's something that may be a direction that this goes. So I guess stepping out on faith, which is every day, right? You leave the house, changing patterns of panic, I suppose, just trying on believing that would be a new neural pathway. And remembering in the right way, not living in the past, but remembering blessings, encouragements, and remembering, what was your natural proclivity, and somehow find a way to combine those skills to make bills, I've had 2 auditions come, and I've been steadfast with that. I don't know where I'm at in the number. It's hundreds, maybe peaking into the thousands. It's definitely over my career. It's been over 1,000 auditions and things like that, and a couple of jobs and a couple of gigs and some TV appearances. But and that's the rate of exchange, and you want to up that. But maybe it's because I was shallow end. Maybe it's time to go into the deep end. And that's where it's at. And thank you for the days of small beginnings, and thank you for letting me rant and go out and step out on faith yourself if you feel like you're in need of it. So thanks, Inga, for those words many, many years ago, and let's try to put them into play. All right, peace.